The video begins with a shocking scene. A distress message recorded by an Egyptian family plays on the screen. The mother, her eyes swollen from crying, holds a photograph of her missing daughter as she pleads for help. The father, with a broken voice, explains that the girl, named Amina, needs urgent surgery due to a rare heart disease. However, 3 days ago he disappeared near the pyramids of Giza. The images of the smiling girl contrast with the despair on the faces of her parents. As the family explains that authorities have done little to find her, the camera abruptly cuts to Jimmy Donaldson, better known as MrBeast, who watches the screen with a frown. "This is crazy," he murmurs, as his team surrounds him. Chris, one of his closest friends, crosses his arms and shakes his head. "And the police? Aren't they looking for the girl?" "It seems like they're taking too long," Carl replies, checking the news on his phone. "There are not enough resources, and they are saying that the girl could have been lost in the underground structures." Jimmy runs his hand through his hair. Over the years, he's taken on all sorts of challenges, from being buried alive to surviving on a desert island. But this was not a test to entertain his audience. This was real. A life was at stake. Immediately, he begins to mobilize his team. Using his influence and resources, he organizes a trip to Egypt to help in the search. Not only will it cover the girl's medical expenses if she is found, but it will also use advanced technology, rescue equipment, and drones to explore every corner of the pyramids. "We can't waste time. Every minute counts," he says with determination. Cut to images of plane tickets being booked, suitcases being packed, and cameras ready to document every step of the mission. In a matter of hours, MrBeast and his team board a flight to Cairo, without knowing that they are about to embark on the most intense adventure of their lives. The plane lands in Cairo in the middle of the morning. The heat of the desert is felt even at that hour, and the city vibrates with the sound of horns and markets that never seem to sleep. MrBeast and his team rush down, ready to face the most important mission they have had so far. As soon as they arrive at the hotel where they will stay, Jimmy takes his phone and contacts Amina's family. His team had already made arrangements for the call, and a few minutes later, the screen shows the parents' distraught face. "Thank you for talking to us," Jimmy says in a warm but serious tone. "I can't imagine what you are going through, but I want you to know that we will do everything we can to find your daughter." The mother cannot hold back her tears. Her husband, with a trembling but firm voice, explains the facts again. Amina disappeared 3 days ago while playing near the pyramids. He had gone with his uncle to sell crafts, but in a moment of distraction, she was no longer there. "We didn't hear any screams. There were no signs of a struggle. He just vanished." Jimmy nods, his face dark. "I will cover all the costs of the surgery. You don't have to worry about that." The father sobs, and the mother brings her hands to her face, repeatedly thanking him. But Jimmy isn't done. "First, we have to find her." Chris, Carl, and the rest of the team watch in silence. There is a weight in the room, a mix of urgency and hope. "We are putting together a search team with the best we have. Drones, thermal cameras, experts in exploring ancient structures. We're not going to stop until we find her." Amina's parents nod, hanging on to Jimmy's every word like a lifeline. Before ending the call, Jimmy makes one last promise. "It doesn't matter what it costs. We won't leave here without her." The team then sets off. They meet with local guides and archaeology experts to understand the internal design of the pyramids. They contact the authorities to obtain special permits. Every detail is fine-tuned with precision. Hours pass between old maps, coordinates, and exploration strategies. Finally, the plan is ready. At dawn, the search will begin. The sun begins to rise over Cairo as the MrBeast team officially sets foot on Egyptian soil. After a long flight, fatigue shows on their faces, but the urgency of the mission keeps them going. Upon leaving the airport, they encounter the chaos of the city. Cars moving without apparent order, the bustle of street vendors, and the dust of the desert that seems to envelop everything. Jimmy and his team quickly board a private shuttle to their hotel, but there's no time to rest. From the vehicle, Jimmy watches the outline of the pyramids in the distance and feels the weight of the task ahead of them. Do you realize that we are about to do something that no one has tried before? Carl asks, looking out the window. Yeah. And we could get into trouble real quick, Chris says. We are not here to explore for fun. As soon as they arrive at the hotel, the team settles into an improvised conference room where several experts are already waiting for them. Among them, there are archaeologists, local guides and experienced explorers who know every tunnel and passage of the pyramids. One of the experts, an archaeologist named Dr. Hassan, spreads out a detailed map of the Great Pyramid of Giza on the table. If the girl disappeared near here, there are several possibilities. Some as yet undocumented tunnels may have collapsed, leaving her trapped. There are also hidden cameras that have been recently discovered, he explains, pointing to different points on the map. Jimmy listens intently, while his team takes notes. We are going to need permits to access certain areas, warns Dr. Hassan, and they must also take into account the risks. At that moment, the conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a local police officer who has been sent to supervise the expedition. His expression is stern as he shakes Jimmy's hand. I admire what they're trying to do, but the pyramids are not a safe place, he warns. There are oxygen-depleted tunnels, ancient traps, places where no one has set foot in centuries. The girl could have fallen into any of them. The weight of the warning falls on everyone in the room. However, Jimmy remains determined. It doesn't matter how difficult it is, he says. Let's find her. The officer sighs and, after a moment of silence, nods. Fine, but if they are going to do this, they will do it under our rules. With tensions rising, the team knows they face a mission more challenging than they imagined. However, there is no turning back now. The next morning, with the first light of dawn, they will head to the pyramids to begin the search. The sun has not yet fully risen when MrBeast and his team arrive at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The imposing silhouette of the structure rises before them, casting shadows that seem to hide secrets of thousands of years. This is crazy, Carl whispers as he adjusts his recording equipment. Around them, a group of archaeologists and Egyptian government officials explain the basic rules for exploration. Some sectors are completely prohibited due to their fragility, while others require special permits. We're not here to sightsee, Jimmy remembers. Let's find them. Hassan, the archaeologist accompanying them, begins to guide them through the main entrance to the pyramid. With each step, the air becomes denser and the sound of the outside world disappears. There are many stories about people who have disappeared in these structures, the doctor comments as they advance. Explorers who never left, tourists who got lost and were never found. Some say that there are still unknown passages that close behind them. Is that true or just a legend? Chris asks, trying to hide his nervousness. The archaeologist shrugs his shoulders. Much of what we know about these pyramids comes from ancient records and recent exploration. But there is always the possibility that there is more than we imagine. As the team advances, they use thermal cameras and motion sensors to identify possible hidden routes. Police have outlined an area where they believe Amina may have fallen or been trapped. If it was nearby and disappeared without a trace, it means there is a path we haven't seen, Jimmy analyzes. Suddenly, one of the sensors picks up something unusual. A draft coming from one of the walls suggests there could be a hidden passage. Stop! Exclaims one of the officers. Everyone remains silent. The wall in front of them has ancient inscriptions that do not appear in common records. This wasn't on the plans we reviewed, says Dr. Hassan, his eyes wide in astonishment. It may be a sealed entrance. The excitement and tension increase. If there is a hidden path, maybe Amina ended up trapped there. Jimmy approaches slowly, placing his hand on the wall, feeling the slight breeze escaping through the cracks. It could be here. The question now is how to open it without overturning centuries of history. The interior of the pyramid is suffocating. The air feels heavy, laden with dust and mystery. MrBeast and his team have set up a makeshift operation center inside the structure, where they review digital maps and compare information with archaeologists and local authorities. Let's split into 2 teams, Jimmy says, pointing to the holographic map on his tablet. One will explore this main section, and the other will investigate the area where we found the air current. The first team, led by Chris and Carl, enters the known passages of the pyramid with thermal cameras and depth scanners. The second lead, by Jimmy, focuses on the wall with the ancient inscriptions, looking for a way to open what appears to be a sealed passage. A few minutes later, Chris calls the main team over the radio. "We found something." Jimmy and the others run to their location. In a dusty corner of the passage, among the accumulated sand and debris, Chris holds a small object in his hands. It is a children's bracelet made of frayed fabric, with colored beads. Amina's parents mentioned that she always wore a bracelet like that, Jimmy says with a hopeful tone. But the excitement doesn't last long. If she was here, why aren't there more traces? Carl asks, looking around. The uncertainty intensifies when another member of the team shines his flashlight on a series of symbols engraved on the walls. They are not common hieroglyphics. What does this mean? Chris asks. Dr. Hassan approaches with a frown. These symbols do not belong to traditional Egyptian writing. They are brands that some explorers and ancient looters left to point out. Hidden passages or warnings. Jimmy is looking for saliva. Warnings of what? The archaeologist looks at him seriously. It could mean danger or entry to a secret passage. The discovery of the bracelet and the symbols renews the team's energy. Now they have proof that Amina was in the pyramid, and more importantly, that she could still be alive somewhere within its depths. But as they analyze the engravings, a subtle vibration runs through the floor. Did you feel that? Carl asks with wide eyes. A distant sound, as if something was moving in the bowels of the pyramid, echoes in the distance. The rumbling sound in the depths of the pyramid slowly fades away, leaving the team in an eerie silence. MrBeast, flashlight in hand, looks at the symbols on the wall as his mind processes what just happened. But before they can analyze the situation further, their satellite phone vibrates. It is an urgent message from Amina's family. His health could worsen at any moment. Jimmy reads aloud. The team exchanges worried glances. Although they already felt the urgency of the mission, this message changes everything. Amina is not only missing, she is in danger of death if she is not found in time. "We can't waste another minute," Chris says, clenching his fists. Jimmy nods and takes a deep breath. For the first time, he feels the weight of responsibility on his chest like a rock. He has done hundreds of extreme challenges on his channel. He has given away millions of dollars, but he has never had a mission with a life at stake. If we fail, Amina might not survive. Think, just as the team tries to decide what to do next, an older man, with sun-beaten skin and a sharp gaze, approaches them. It's Omar, a local explorer who has worked on archaeological excavations for more than 3 decades. They've been looking at the conventional passages, he says in Arabic, as Dr. Hassan translates. But there is another way. Another way? Jimmy asks curiously. Omar nods and points to a point on the digital map. There is an alternative route. An underground tunnel that modern records barely mention, because it is dangerous and has never been fully explored. Carl frowns. Never explored? Because? The explorer responds in a deep voice. Because many believe it is cursed. A chill runs down the spines of some members of the team. "I don't care if it's cursed or not," Jimmy says, determined. If there's a chance Amina is there, we have to go in. The team knows that this new path could be their only chance to find her before it's too late. With new determination, they prepare to descend into the unknown. Flashlights illuminate the narrow underground tunnel as the team cautiously advances. The air is thick, heavy with dust and a faint aroma of ancient humidity. Each footstep echoes off the stone walls, amplifying the sound into an ominous echo. Carl, who is leading the way with a thermal scanner, suddenly stops walking. "Wait, quote," he whispers, eyes glued to the screen. "Here's something." They all gather around the device. The image shows traces of heat, weak but recent. Someone or something has been here recently. It could be Amina, Jimmy says hopefully. Or someone who saw her. Following the trail, they move forward until the walls of the passage begin to narrow. The light from the flashlights reveals something that makes them hold their breath. Footprints in the dust of the floor. They are small, too small to belong to an adult. "My God," Chris murmurs. They are from a child. The finding prompts the team to move faster, but also more cautiously. If Amina has been here, why hasn't she come out? Is she trapped? Or is there something else? After following the footprints for a few more meters, they reach a wall that appears to be the end of the tunnel. "It can't end here," says Carl, feeling the surface with his hands. Explorer Omar examines the wall and notices that there is a slight space between the stones. "Help me push," he orders, with effort. They begin to move the loose stones until one of them gives way, revealing a small opening. One by one, they slip through space, entering a hidden camera which is not on any known map. Inside, the air is even heavier. The room is larger than they expected, with ancient inscriptions on the walls and what appear to be ancient vessels and offering objects. But what catches her attention the most is a torn fabric on the floor. A fabric that matches the description of the clothes Amina was wearing when she disappeared. "She was here," Jimmy whispers, feeling a knot in his stomach. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the silence. It is a low, breathy noise, almost like a sob. It comes from somewhere inside the chamber. The team's hearts are beating strong. Someone is in here. The sobbing repeats, clearer this time. It is a fragile, trembling, childish sound. Jimmy raises his hand, signaling the team to be quiet. Everyone holds their breath, listening intently. The sound comes from the back of the chamber, where the darkness hides corners that the flashlights can barely reach. Suddenly, something moves between the shadows, a fleeting flash. A small silhouette sliding quickly between the ancient stone columns. "Over there," Christ exclaims, pointing his flashlight. But the figure has already been lost in the recesses of the room. Jimmy feels his pulse quicken. "Amin?" He calls cautiously, trying not to scare her. There's no response, only the echo of his own voice bouncing off the chamber. Carl and Tariq, one of the local guides, try to sneak around the area. Each step they take causes a slight creak on the floor covered in dust and ancient debris. Suddenly another sudden movement. Something slides behind one of the stone statues, and, for a moment, Jimmy makes out something in the gloom, big eyes, shining. In the dark, the team is paralyzed. That doesn't look like a girl," Carl whispers, a shiver running down his spine. But before anyone can react, the figure runs again, closer this time. The flashlights barely manage to follow his movement. Uncertainty takes over the team. If it's Amina, why doesn't she answer? Chris asks, his voice strained. If it's not her... Carl adds, swallowing. Then who is here with us? A strange silence covers the chamber. The feeling of being observed, it gets stronger. Jimmy feels like they have crossed an invisible line. A threshold into the unknown. And the worst of all... They are not alone. Jimmy feels his breathing quicken. The figure continues to move through the shadows, but now it seems slower, more erratic. She's no longer running away... She's exhausted. Chris and Carl exchange glances. They know it. It's her, Amina, Jimmy says, softening his tone. We are here to help you. A small sound filters through the darkness. It's a sob, weak, broken. Jimmy advances cautiously, shining his flashlight into the darkest corner of the chamber. And then he sees her, huddled against the wall, eyes filled with terror. Is the girl they've been looking for. His clothes are dirty, torn in places. Her face, covered in dust and dried tears, reflects a mixture of fear and hope. His hands shake. He hasn't eaten or drunk in days. Jimmy crouches down slowly, still looking at her. Everything is fine, he whispers. We came to look for you. For a moment, Amina doesn't respond. His body is rigid, trapped in the trauma of his experience. But when he sees the faces of Jimmy and the team, something changes in his eyes. The girl bursts into tears and falls into Jimmy's arms. The team reacts immediately. Carl gives her some water, and Chris takes a thermal blanket out of his backpack to cover her. Omar checks his vital signs. She's dehydrated and in shock, he reports, but she's alive. Jimmy feels a lump in his throat as he holds her in his arms. The girl can barely stand. He has gone through hell inside these pyramids. We have to get out of here now, says Carl, looking at the entrance. We don't know how much longer he can hold out. Jimmy nods and picks her up, making sure she's wrapped tightly in the blanket. The team turns on the cameras, recording every moment. This is the moment everyone was waiting for, Amina's rescue. The team moves quickly, guided by the lights of their flashlights. Every step they take outside the hidden camera is one more step towards safety. The cool air of the Egyptian night hits their faces as they finally emerge outside. Several members of the expedition who were waiting outside run towards them. They found her. Screams one of the explorers that the cameras continue rolling as Amina, still in Jimmy's arms, slowly opens her eyes and sees the stars above her. Head, you're safe, Jimmy whispers. Everything is going to be fine. The team applauds, some with tears in their eyes. They know there is still a long road ahead, but they have achieved the impossible. They have found Amina alive. Jimmy adjusts his grip on Amina, making sure her small form is still wrapped in the thermal blanket. There's no time to waste. We have to get out of here quickly, Chris says, illuminating the passage where they entered. But as soon as they take the first step, they realize the problem. The entrance through which they had arrived now appears narrower, more claustrophobic. The lack of oxygen becomes evident. Carl puts a hand on his chest. Do you feel it? He says, breathing heavily. The air here is denser. Tariq, the local scout, frowns. These sealed chambers do not have good ventilation. We may have been stirring up dust and reducing oxygen without realizing it. Jimmy feels the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. There is no margin for error. The team advances, but the passages are increasingly narrower. Jimmy, carrying Amina, must bow to pass. His muscles protest the effort, but he doesn't stop. Let me take her for a while, Carl offers. Jimmy shakes his head. I'm fine, he answers, determined. Let's continue. Sweat covers their foreheads. Each breath feels heavier. Amina clings to Jimmy tightly, her small body shaking with exhaustion and fear. Everything's okay, he whispers, even though he knows they can't stop. The team continues to move forward. Each step requires effort. Each inhalation becomes more difficult. Chris trips on a loose rock and nearly falls, but Tariq catches him in time. Careful, warns the explorer. These structures are old. One wrong move and we could be trapped. Finally, they see the exit. The glow of the moon illuminates the entrance to the pyramid. The night breeze gives them a break. They are close, but then a collapse. The echo of falling stones echoes behind them. Chris and Carl turn around immediately. The structure is giving way. Jimmy feels his heart hammering in his chest. If they Don't come out now, they could get trapped. Run! Tariq shouts with one last effort. The team quickens the pace. Dust and sand begin to fill the air, making visibility difficult. Jimmy adjusts his grip on Amina and takes one last leap out of the pyramid. The team falls to the desert sand, coughing and gasping. They did it. Jimmy immediately sits up and checks on Amina. Her eyes are open, her breathing still labored, but she is alive. The girl looks at him with gratitude. And for the first time, smiles a little. The team hugs each other, exhausted but excited. The cameras capture the moment. This was incredible. Carl whispers. Chris lets out a nervous laugh. We almost stayed in there. Man. Jimmy, his eyes still fixed on Amina. He knows it was all worth it, but the mission is not over yet. The girl needs medical attention immediately. The air is still thick with sand and adrenaline as the MrBeast team rises from the desert sand. Amina is still in Jimmy's arms, her little fingers clinging to his shirt. She is alive, but her condition is critical. We have to take her to the hospital now. Carl shouts, looking around. Tariq, the local scout, is already in communication with his team in the city. A vehicle is waiting for us outside the archaeological site. Without wasting a second, they run towards the SUV that will take them to Cairo. The driver hits the accelerator hard, kicking up a cloud of dust behind them. The road is uneven and treacherous, but every minute counts. Jimmy holds tightly onto Amina, who is breathing weakly. Hold on, little one, he whispers, noticing how fragile she feels in his arms. The traffic in the city is chaotic, but the truck moves forward between horns and crowded streets. Everyone knows that time is running out. Finally, they arrive at the most prestigious hospital in Cairo. The medical staff is already waiting for you at the entrance. The doctors receive Amina immediately and rush her to the emergency room. MrBeast and his team, covered in dust and sweat, are left in the waiting room, breathless. Minutes later, an Egyptian doctor with a white coat and a serious expression approaches. The girl is very weak, he says. His condition is serious, and he needs surgery in a matter of hours. Jimmy feels a chill run down his spine. Can you have surgery here? He asks, his voice strained. The doctor hesitates. Our capacity is limited for a surgery of this level. An urgent transfer to a hospital with better equipment is recommended. Jimmy doesn't think twice. Then we will take her to the United States. Immediately. Chris, Carl and the rest of the team nod. There is no discussion. Jimmy takes out his phone and calls his team in the United States. Prepare a private plane with medical equipment. We take off as soon as we land here. Meanwhile, doctors stabilize Amina and place her on a stretcher with oxygen. Every second is crucial. The Cairo hospital provides them with an ambulance to reach the airport tarmac directly. Jimmy looks at the girl. Don't worry, Amina, he tells her with a hopeful smile. We'll take you home. The private plane lands on American soil in the middle of the night. Lights flash on the runway as an ambulance waits with its engine running. Amina is weak, but still clinging to life. Jimmy, Carl and Chris rush down, accompanying the doctors who carry the girl on a stretcher. Every movement is broadcast live to millions of people around the world. Come on, come on, come on. Carl urges, making sure everything goes as planned. The live stream on the MrBeast channel reaches record numbers. The whole world wait with your heart in your mouth. The doctors receive Amina and take her directly to the operating room. The surgery is extremely complex and high risk. Jimmy, Chris and Carl wait in the living room, tense. How long will it take? Chris asks, unable to sit still. It depends on your response to the anesthesia and the complication of the procedure, explains a doctor. It could take several hours. Jimmy runs his hands over his face, exhausted. It has to turn out well, he whispers. The hours pass slowly. Every second is agony. MrBeast team keeps updating the audience. People continue to donate en masse. The emotion is overwhelming. Suddenly, the door to the operating room opens. A doctor with a serious expression walks towards them. The chat in the stream stops. Jimmy and his team stand up. How are you doing? He asks, his voice breaking. The doctor takes a deep breath. We did everything possible. The silence is unbearable, but the surgery was a success. Amina is out of danger. Chris falls to his knees with his hands on his head. Carl hugs Jimmy. Tears flow uncontrollably. Hours later, Amina opens her eyes. Her small hand reaches for Jimmy's. Thank you, he whispers with a weak smile. Jimmy smiles, eyes glassy. You did it, champion. The hospital hallway is completely silent. Every second feels like an eternity. MrBeast, Chris and Carl are sitting, staring at the operating room door. Amina's family prays quietly, holding their hands tightly. Jimmy leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Is it sold out? He hasn't slept in almost 2 days, but his mind won't stop asking, what if we don't make it? Carl pats him on the back. She's strong, Jimmy. He will make it. But right now, uncertainty is the only thing real on the MrBeast channel. More than 50 million people follow the live stream. Some fans have even organized live events in different parts of the world to watch the update together. After an hour, Jimmy stands up and starts pacing back and forth. Every minute that passes feels heavier. I need to know something. Whatever. He approaches the hospital reception. Do you have any update on Amina's surgery? The nurse looks at him with empathy, but shakes her head. The doctors are still working. It is a complicated operation, but we will do our best to inform you soon. Jimmy sighs and goes back to the team. Carl hands him a coffee. You haven't eaten anything. Jimmy looks at him, but he barely has any appetite. When she's okay, I'll celebrate with a hamburger. Now I just want him to get out of there. After what they seem endless hours, the doors to the operating room finally open. A doctor in a white coat and gloves still on approaches them. Jimmy feels like his heart is going to jump out of his chest. Doctor. Jimmy can barely speak. How is Amina? The doctor takes a deep breath. His expression is serious. We did everything possible. Jimmy feels like his world stops. Amina's family holds their breath. But the doctor gives a slight smile. The surgery was a success. For a second, no one reacts. Then the excitement explodes. Chris lets out a cry of relief. Carl covers his face with his hands, crying. Amina's mother falls to her knees, thanking God. Jimmy, he covers his face with his hands. All the weight of the mission, the stress, the fear, dissolves in a torrent of tears. Can we see it? He asks, his voice breaking. The doctor nods. She's still asleep, but she'll wake up soon. The worst has happened. The live stream reaches its peak of viewers. Jimmy looks at the camera, wiping away tears. We didn't make it. She did it. The hospital room is completely silent. Only the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor is heard. Jimmy, Carl, Chris, and Amina's family are gathered around the bed, eagerly awaiting the moment she wakes up. Her small figure seems fragile, but the doctor assured that her recovery will be quick. Amina has proven to be a true warrior. Minutes later, his hand moves slightly. Jimmy approaches, heart racing. Amina, can you hear us? The girl's eyelids tremble and slowly open. For the first time in days, he sees the light again. His mother lets out a choked sob and takes his hand tenderly. My love. We are here. Amina's eyes dart around the room until they stop on Jimmy. You. His voice is barely a whisper. The man in the videos. Jimmy laughs through his tears. Yes, it's me. But you are the real star here. She smiles weakly. Where? Am I? In a hospital in the United States. You are safe. Amina absorbs the information and her eyes fill with tears. I thought I would never see them again. Her mother wraps her in a hug, shaking with emotion. We never stop looking for you. My love. Never. Jimmy steps away for a moment to talk to the camera. I never thought a video would take me here. But this experience changed my life forever. Look at little Amina, who is now laughing with her family. The world needs more people who help without expecting anything in return. If we can make a difference in just one person's life, we have already won. Jimmy turns to the girl and gently takes her hand. Amen. Now comes the best part. She looks at him curiously. Which? Jimmy smiles. The sun shines through the hospital window. Amina is no longer the fragile and scared girl they found in the depths of the pyramids. Now he smiles, plays and hugs his family with renewed energy. The days go by, and Amina's story goes viral all over the world. International media call her the most epic rescue in YouTube history. MrBeast's video has already surpassed 500 million views. While Amina recovers, a support fund is created for children in similar situations. Donations come from all over the world. Jimmy stares at the screen in disbelief. I can't believe it. This is bigger than I imagined. Carl smiles. Not only did we find Amina, we inspire millions of people to help. Days later, MrBeast records a message for his audience. This has been the most incredible adventure of my life, and it won't be the last. He pauses and looks at the camera with determination. If this video inspired you, I ask you just one thing. Do something nice for someone today. It doesn't have to be something huge. Sometimes a small action changes a life. Jimmy smiles and glances at Amina, who is playing with her brother in the background. This is just the beginning. We are going to continue changing lives. The video ends with images of Amina running through a park, laughing in the sun. Your nightmares behind you. Thanks to a community united by compassion and a content creator who decided to use his platform to do good.